to this overview of Assessment 1. Your first assessment is a presentation, an oral presentation that will reflect and evaluate a project conducted within a sports development or coaching context. It's a 25-minute presentation. It's worth 40% of the module. Okay, so bear in mind this is a double 40 credit module, so it's worth a big chunk of marks. And you will be completing these presentations during your residential week after Christmas. So I'm going to explain the assessment in more detail. You're going to complete an action research to identify an area of work where you can attempt to improve practice. So what you will find is an overview of more detail of what action research is within your lecture material. So the learning outcomes being addressed, you're going to review and analyse professional development issue of practice utilising and making effective and appropriate reference to relevant models, principles and concepts. So this is where you're going to embed some theory and references. Manage their personal and professional resources, knowledge, understanding, skills and experience of time, and professional development in order to achieve their own and organisations or work objectives. So you're going to identify an action research project that is going to implement and improve and work towards work objectives. Then you're going to make reasoned and clear and concise recommendations for improvement of practice and effectively undertake an attempt to improve professional practice using an appropriate action research model. So you're going to identify an action research model you're going to use, and you're actually going to complete that action research and implement an area of improvement through a piece of project work and then present that back in a presentation setting. So what is action research? It's done by systematically collecting data on your everyday practice and analysing in order to come to some decisions about your future practice and what it should be. Action research is a process of posing a question, dilemma, problem, challenge, gathering data, reflecting on that data and making decisions about a course of action. So here I've picked one action research model. There are, a multitude of action research models. You can find them online, you can find them in the lecture material. But what it looks at is identifying the problem, gathering some data, interpreting that data, acting on the evidence, evaluating the results, and then providing next steps. That almost, those key headings are almost the kind of headings you could include in your presentation. So problem, what was the data you gathered, how did you interpret it, how did you act on it, how you evaluated it, and next steps. So you can actually complete this piece of project work on something of your choice. And you're going to need to discuss this with your regional director, your mentor, your director of coaching, whoever it is you're working with. It could be the AWSO regional commissioner, whoever it is you're working with. You're going to need to have a conversation about what this action research project comprises of and how it can impact on what they want it to be and what you want it to be in your region. So how do you do action research? You develop a plan of critically informed action to improve what is already happening. Act to implement the plan. Observe the effects of critical informed action on the context in which it occurs. And reflect on the effects on the basis for future planning. Okay, so that's basically, the previous model, just explained in a different format. Here's an example of an action research project. I've just plucked this general idea, so you need to kind of go through this process yourself of identifying a potential problem. So a drop off in girls' participation with the club age 14. I've noticed this kind of decrease. I'm going to complete some primary research with coaches, players and parents. I'm going to read and do some research around barriers to participation in books and journals. I'm going to identify and look at good practice and successful projects in this area. I'm going to develop and implement initiatives to address the problem. I'm going to record and observe the initiative. I'm going to analyse the project or initiative. And I'm going to write up my findings, reflect on the effectiveness of the project, and then come up with recommendations for future practice. So that would be my piece of action research linked to my, obviously, work placement. So this project or intervention should be identified early on in the placement, and the presentation should include the following key areas. So you can use one of those models. Discussion of the action research approach used. So you're going to identify, right, I'm using this model and I'm going to conduct this research to do the following. Okay, so there will need to be some theory embedded in that. We're going to look at what is the question. Okay, so what is the aim of your project? Why was the project designed? What was the problem and the area of improvement? We're then going to plan. Project planning, what was the evidence that was collected to why the project was needed? It could be academic material, it could be from stakeholders, so as I said, speaking to parents, coaches, whatever it is. And I'm going to discuss the possible options to improve practice. Then I'm going to act and observe. I'm going to select appropriate action, so what the project entails and how it was implemented. And then finally I'm going to reflect on what was the outcome of the project, what you did and how you met your aims, or how you maybe didn't meet your aims. The presentation should also evaluate the project. So what went well, what needs improving, and should link back to literature, policy and strategy, and should provide appropriate references to relevant models, principles and concepts to provide evidence of the intervention. So if I'm going to do a project on barriers to participation of females, then I'm going to look at policy and strategy of female participation, how we're going to try and get more people involved, or more females involved. I'm going to look at models of practice. So I'm going to look at some sports development theory. So you need to make sure whatever your action research is, and whatever your problem you've identified, there's relevant references in theory embedded into your presentation and linked to that. The other thing to consider, your second assessment, which is going to also run into semester 1 and into semester 2, will also feature the action research project within the work plan you're going to develop. So my key point at this time is that your assessments for this module, you need to look at assessment 1 and assessment 2 right now and start both of those pieces of work as soon as you're starting your placement in the US. The assessment brief, it looks at the background aims, of, the kind of criteria of what you're going to be marked against, background and aims, discussion of your action research approach, project implementation, reflection evaluation, evidence-based academic references and recommendations for practice. Then obviously your presentation skills are going to be use of visual aids, communication, clarity, time management, structure and flow, and response to questions. So there's what you're going to be marked against. So to reiterate, you're going to be doing a piece of action research. As I've said, there's some theory on action research in the lecture material. You're going to do a 25-minute presentation on the action research you conducted. So it's about identifying a problem, gathering some information on that problem, interpreting the evidence and data, acting on it, so actually delivering something to address the problem, evaluating your results, and then obviously moving on to your next steps. That needs to be presented in your presentation format. You need to ensure you include references in theory. Again, as I've said, your assessment 1 and 2 will both start now, and you will continue both the assessment 1 from now until January when you present it, and assessment 2 runs through for the whole of the year, and you're going to be completing work that links this project research into your assessment 2. So now move on to assessment 2 and watch that video as you're going to be starting both pieces of coursework at this point.